Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the plenary session. We will now continue our concurrent session with Dr. Karanvir Kukreja from Paws International, and his session will be on engagement to end the cruel dog and cat meat trade. Dr. Karanvir, you may start.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I realize it's right after lunch, so thank you for making the effort. I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me the chance to speak. My name's Kukreja. I work for Paws International, and I head up Paws' work on political and public mobilization to improve companion animal welfare in Southeast Asia. In a previous life, I worked as a small animal vet, and then I worked for the World Organization for Animal Health and World Animal Protection. And I've been working for Paws for 4 years, largely on the dog and cat meat trade and some other issues. Now, this isn't working. Should I just tell you? Okay, all good. So before we start, I'd like to, it's not working again. Okay, before we start, I'd like to give you a brief outline of what we'll be talking about today. There is a lot that I would like to cover, but we have a limited amount of time, so if there's anything more you want to know, feel free to reach out to me or my colleagues. So I'll talk a bit about the dog and cat meat trade in Southeast Asia and the issues with it. A bit about the theory of change, how we believe that we are going to end the trade with our partners. I'll cover the local activities that we've done, public education and mobilization, and engagement with the tourism sector and the government sector. Finally, I'm going to conclude with the change we are seeing and how it all links together. So, for those of you that don't know, basically the dog and cat meat trade in Cambodia, Indonesia, and Vietnam is estimated to kill 10 million dogs and cats per year. 9 million dogs, about 1 million cats. There is extreme cruelty at all stages. So from the capture, and often the animals that are taken in are stolen from their homes, pets stolen from their homes, to transport and holding where they're kept in absolutely horrific conditions and not given food or water for days. And then the slaughter is equally horrific, where animals are often drowned or they're bludgeoned. My apologies for the graphic photo, but that's what our investigators have seen. That's what we've seen. That's the reality of the trade. So animal welfare issues, it's a no-brainer here. And there are also public health risks. So there have been several studies linking the dog and cat meat trade to rabies. Also, fact of the matter is you need to reach a certain level of vaccination coverage, 70% to eradicate rabies from a population. You can't do that if you've got millions of animals leaving and you don't have a stable population. And also the conditions of the trade really provide kind of a perfect situation for the emergence of novel disease. So you've got poor hygiene, you've got poor animal welfare, you've got huge network hubs, you've got mixing of species. Now, also, what's not talked about as much is the societal risks. The trade is incredibly violent, and violence has been documented to have a negative effect on those engaging in it, those viewing it, and often the captures are done in full public view. We've seen children around the slaughterhouses, so lots of detrimental effects. The trade also, even though it's not illegal, it breaks a lot of laws on animal movement, etc. Every day it's breaking laws, and that can cause knock-on issues in respect for the law and social order. Finally, there are reputational and economic risks. One of these is because surveys have shown, I think, 90% of tourists care about animal welfare in their destination country. And the fact that there's a dog and cat meat trade here, we've seen that shocks a lot of tourists. It does get a lot of attention. Now, our theory of change. So, not expecting you to read all that, but I'll try to introduce it simply. So I'll go backwards. Eventually, what we want is we want countries to introduce and enforce policies, legislation against the trade. So we're hoping to get that in at least 2 in the next few years, hopefully 3. Now, how do we get this? We need to show success. We need to show localities, cities going dog and cat meat free, provinces going dog and cat meat free, slaughterhouse conversions, because that shows the way forward. We also need people to speak out. We also need key opinion leaders and politicians to speak out, because eventually we need to basically build a movement, build an environment, and that takes a lot of work and that takes a lot of time. So in this, we target the trade, of course, we target the general public, and we target the government and legislative bodies. But on top of that, we also work with those that can influence these people. Now, just talking about some of our local activities that are really important for building momentum. So we've closed with our partners and with locals 4 slaughterhouses in Cambodia and Vietnam since 2019. Also, after Siem Reap made the trade illegal, we assisted them in a confiscation of 61 dogs, most of which have found loving homes, and we're finding homes for the rest. Also, we're part of the Dog Meat Free Indonesia Coalition, and we were part of a closure. We were part of prosecutions and interceptions in Indonesia, and these prosecutions were successful, and it shows that the dog and cat meat trade can be prosecuted, people can be penalized. We also have done a number of investigations and reports. Now, these investigations and reports are really important for our lobbying with government bodies. We've done a health report that really goes into the health risks in detail. And also, we've gone a specific report on cat meat trade. So this really helps. And also, when you go into a government office to talk, you have a report to leave. That adds a lot more weight. We also have created a reporting tool on for the dog and cat meat trade. It's being piloted in 2 provinces in Vietnam. This is to help our understanding of the local trade, get the public to inform us of what's going on, and hopefully in the future help with law enforcement, particularly with illegal activities. My colleague Matt over there and his team also work hard to enhance capacity in stray animal care, because strays are often taken into the trade too, and improving stray animal care forms part of a holistic solution to this. So now, as I mentioned, we spend a lot of time on mobilizing people. So there's a global petition, but there's also individual actions where we get people to write letters to the government, where we get people to send postcards. Now, if you want, I can talk in detail about these later, but essentially the sentiment is there against the trade, but we give people the chance to speak out, to make it visible, and to basically bring this to government again and again. So we had a campaign called This Is Not Vietnam 2 years ago, and we're doing a virtual marathon now. Now, I mentioned tourism. So animal cruelty does matter to a very large proportion of tourists. And if we get the message through that tourists care about this, there are economic implications. So, for example, we will allow tourists to speak out. We did a campaign where I think 25,000 people sent postcards to the tourism ministers of these countries. We've had 85 companies sign a corporate pledge supporting an end to the trade, and we've also had companies give us support in terms of prizes for our marathons, etc. So companies are visibly also speaking out against the trade. And of course, we need to directly engage with the government, because we can close some slaughterhouses, etc., but the government needs to get behind this effort. So we directly meet with the government whenever we can. We do focused mobilizations. We do stakeholder events where people can speak out and share ideas. We also work to build capacity for government. That builds our relationship with them and also improves animal welfare in general. And we also engage the diplomatic sector in the hope that other countries will also say, hey, this is an issue for us. And we always ensure the issue is regularly visible in the press. And it's really taken a life of its own. It's in the press all the time in some countries now. And while the trade has not been banned yet, we are starting to see change. So in terms of the public, our metrics have shown that social media engagement on the issue is regularly rising. We've had a global petition that has 2 million signatures. We've had 250,000 just from those 3 countries. We've had actually that's a mistake, we've had more than 170 reports to the DCMT reporting tool in Vietnam. Right now it's in a pilot phase. We're expecting to make it nationwide and get a lot more. We've had celebrities speaking out regularly against the trade. We did a survey in Vietnam 2 years ago, and we found that 88% of people, and we asked this question in a lot of different ways, 88% of people said they would support a ban on the trade, and 95% said eating dog and cat meat is not Vietnamese culture. The numbers are pretty similar for Cambodia, and in a DMFI survey in Indonesia, pretty similar. So the people themselves in these countries don't want the trade, and we keep on putting this message to the government. And we've also seen changes at the government level. So I mentioned the dog and cat meat trade ban in Siem Reap. So that was after extended conversations with us and with our partners, Animal Rescue Cambodia. Also 2 years ago, Hoi An in Vietnam, they signed an agreement with us to work together to go towards DCMT freedom, and that has progressed. And so far, 26 localities in Indonesia, including the capital, Jakarta, have banned the dog and cat meat trade and have taken enforcement actions for that. On a national level, the Cambodian national rabies plan currently includes dog and cat meat trade as a factor to be considered. There have been multiple stakeholder events over the last year where government personalities speak out against the trade. The Vietnam One Health Partnership, which is a collaboration of the Ministries of Agriculture, Health and Environment, have agreed to form a companion animals working group. This is one of the issues that will be discussed there. And I mean, again, people are speaking out. Vietnam's National Rabies Coordinator said publicly, I think just 2 weeks ago, that dog and cat meat trade is a huge obstacle to eradicating rabies in Vietnam. So government personalities are starting to see the importance of this too. Now I've gone through a lot of information, so I just wanted to bring it all back together. Currently, the dog and cat meat trade is not high on the agenda of these countries. I mean, usually animal welfare isn't really high on their agenda. So we really need to build an environment for change where people can speak out, where they can see these opinions, where they can see this sentiment to drive them towards change, for them to see change is safe. So all the public mobilization, it's aimed to get the message that really the majority of your people want this, gives the government a bit of impetus to pass policy, and also they're always afraid of being criticized, but if they can say, well, we're doing it for the majority, that might help. And then you also have the engagement from the tourism sector, the diplomatic sector, that adds more of an impetus. And the local activities are incredibly important because they show what can be done. They show that it's possible. And then it also shows that us and our partners are there to help the government through this. Now, to conclude, I'd just like to say, the dog and cat meat trade is very complex. There's lots of different entry points. There's a lot of different market chains, different attitudes between countries too. It does require a complex solution. I did want to say that no one organization can do this alone. We need to capitalize on each other's strengths. We also need to look at getting support from other sectors. So that's, for example, the health sector, etc. And that the changes are slow. It will take time, but I think if we all work together, we can get a Southeast Asia and a world without dog and cat meat. Thank you.
All right, so we will now open Q&A session for Dr. Karanvir. All right. The lady in the back.
Hi, Steph.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to understand a bit more about the DCMT tool that you were talking about.
The reporting tool. The reporting tool? Yep, so it's a web-based reporting tool. Right now it's only being piloted in Quang Nam province and Da Nang province in Vietnam. So people can go in. They can report 7 different types of DCMT offenses. They can report restaurants, they can report slaughterhouses, they can report animals being transported, a few other things, really, or their animals being stolen. They report the locations, any other information they have. Oh, also poison baits is one, because that's a public health risk. We take these reports together, then we give a summary report to the government. Now, we have spoken to one of the governments we deal with. We've asked them, once we get monthly reports, do you want those? They have said yes. The thing is, we're just doing some upgrades at the moment, so we're not really promoting it. But yeah, we had, I think in 5 months, we had something like 140 reports and a lot of enthusiasm from our followers.
And is that like a geospatial location as well?
That's one of the upgrades we're looking at. Currently, people can put in addresses and they can put in addresses and locations, but that's one of the upgrades we're trying to put in to get a geospatial location so that we can also plot this out in a map, and that can help with law enforcement.
Thank you so much. Are the challenges of fighting the meat trade different between dog and cat?
Well, so cat meat is really, it's really prominent in Vietnam. But and then also the linkages between cat meat and rabies is not as apparent as with dog meat. And generally, it's 9 million dogs, it's 1 million cats. So, but at the same time, people relate them in their minds. So it's people, when you speak to people, they always think dogs. And we often have to say, hey, cats too. I mean, most of the pictures we also get is dogs. But so there is a bit of, I mean, a lot of the angles we use are similar, but sometimes it is a bit harder to get cats in. You remember at that workshop we were at in Cambodia, we kept on trying to get cats in, and they were like, dogs okay, cats no. So it takes a bit more of an effort.
That's actually why I asked
Yeah.
everyone to know. It's so difficult to get cats in.
Yeah.
All right, are there any more questions? All right, here.
Thank you very much. A question and a follow-up question, if I don't be so cheeky. With the cat and dog market, can you just tell us a bit more about that? Is it there's a big population that need feeding and a surplus of animals, or is cat and dog meat seen as something special and prized? What kind of culture around the eating of it?
It depends. So, and anyone else. So, for example, so we've done consumption reports. So in Cambodia, a lot of it, dog meat is eaten a lot because it's easy to eat together, and it's basically for some people it's nice to go after work and have some beer and drink and eat dog meat. In Vietnam, there's often a superstitious thing attached that I think, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, dog meat is more popular at the beginning of the month because it gives you luck. Cat meat is more popular at the end of the month because it takes away bad luck. So there is that. But one more thing to consider is that, so we did a survey in 2019, 6% of Cambodians regularly eat dog meat. And in the 2021 survey, we repeated that question. It's the same. So it's really a minority. In Vietnam, 12% of Cambodians, 6% of Vietnamese. I mean, that doesn't sound like a huge number, but still, 6% of Vietnamese is 6 million people. So in terms of the markets, you do have wet market situations. You also have restaurants. It's often attached to the fact that it's a good social meat and it's for luck. Also, we saw some cases where even doctors recommended it for bleeding, but haven't seen too much of that.
So just a follow-up question then. Have you, and in your theory of change, you can see where you're going from these two approaches, but have you ever done any work to speak directly to consumers, whether that has any merit?
Not as yet, because we have to focus our resources. So we haven't tried to reach out to consumers all that much. Our angle has really been to try to get government to do something. I mean, eventually maybe we can include a consumer demand reduction component, but it's getting to 6 million people in Vietnam. It's a bit more difficult, but we have a campaign next year where we're considering including some consumer demand reduction in the mobilization. Thank you.
I just want to know, like, what is the perception of the government, and is there any bill going on in the law making proceedings? What is this perception?
So the law, I mean, currently there's still a long way to go, but for example, we spoke to some senior Ministry of Tourism stakeholders in Cambodia. Was it last year? They said publicly on TV that this is a concern for them. And then when we meet them in meetings, they still seem somewhat neutral. They're not fully convinced as yet. We do have some champions. In Vietnam, you're getting more and more people. I mean, we often hear from Vietnamese people, and even some people in government, saying, oh, it's generally eaten by old people. The trade will end in 10 or 20 years anyway. And we're like, nah, we want it to end earlier than that. But the government, they often say it's going out of style, it's going out of fashion. But then you get people like the Vietnamese National Rabies Coordinator, and her job is to basically eradicate rabies in Vietnam. And she says this is a big issue, this is a big impediment. So I think slowly we're starting to get their support, but it's still going to take some time to really get it to the level where the government has to pass policy. There have been, so in Indonesia, in one of the regencies that banned dog meat trade, DMFI pushed for prosecution. I think one trader got a 10-month jail sentence. Another one got a 6-month jail sentence. So there have been prosecutions in those local regencies. And the problem with theft is it's a bit more difficult, but we're hoping that we get some prosecutions there. So it's improving from what was basically nothing, but there's still a way to go.
Hi. So I'm from India, and there's a state in northeast called Nagaland. So in India, there's the only state which allows dog and cat meat. So in year 2020, it was banned by the government, but they filed a petition this year, and the court allowed them because of the Food and Regulation Rules 2001, in which there was the animals were mentioned. There was no mention of the canine. So my concern is that in that particular region, when the government has banned the dog meat, and this is the only state in which it is happening in India.
Yep.
So the court has given them permission to eat dog meat because of the culture and religious aspect. Do you have any suggestions on which you can tackle this religious and cultural aspect?
I mean, it's a tricky thing, right? And I imagine particularly in India, that's such a multicultural country, has to be sensitive. I mean, one thing is when we did this is not so we had this campaign, this is not Vietnam. We did an event last June. What one participant, so we have these survey results where 95% of people, 94% have said it's not our culture. You could do something like that, but also one of the Vietnamese, I think he was an academic, he said, some people can say it is Vietnamese culture, but it's not good culture. And they said this is like, he said that there are things of the past that we have to move on from. And what I find is the Vietnamese, again, I don't necessarily agree with the way they're putting it, but they say to become civilized, we need to stop this. And yes, it is culture, but culture always changes. And I think it's part of a culture of the past that some people are holding on to. So if you can gather some evidence of what the real public perceptions are. No, I remember seeing the news about Nagaland a couple years ago, and I was really happy. Unfortunately, didn't realize it had come back. Yeah, I mean, a court case in India takes 30 years.
So that is why I just wondering how we can inculcate this particular aspect in this culture and religion aspect so that we can change people's perceptions.
I mean, I'm not sure in India, is it that you need to get, because I'm not sure about the government system, is it you need to go engage on the national level or just at the MLA local?
Certain rules, but the state also has the power to make their own rules. So, but the government already banned in 2020. So
can you appeal that court case to the court case where they allowed people to eat? Can you appeal it to a higher level?
The trader filed a petition in the court saying the government has banned dogmeat, which is not right.
Yep.
That is how they do it in the court. So we will definitely challenge it. And
Yeah.
but my concern is that legislation is just one aspect of it. Public awareness and the cultural aspect also included the whole campaign.
Yeah. Sure.
So we are actually appealing the court decision.
Yeah.
Already filed the appeal. And we are also in the process of carrying out a survey in both Nagaland and Mizoram. So it's not just one state, it's actually two states. And the challenge actually is that in India it is illegal to have dog meat. But, and it's very clearly stated in the law, which is central law. And this ban goes against the central, the fact that they've taken away the ban is going against the central law. There is that fight that's happening. But at the same time, they're currently also working on the other aspect, according to a survey. To really understand, like Karan was saying, you need to understand what people think. And we don't honestly know what the people of Nagaland and Mizoram think. So we're actually in that process.
All right.
All right, so Dr. Karamili for the next session is unable to attend. So we can take more questions for Dr.
Oh,
Karanvir.
wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get myself comfortable. I did a lot already.
So if there's any more questions, just feel free to ask.
And suddenly people start running. Is that no more questions?
So I guess that's it. So you guys can proceed to another session, the Great Hall and the next door. And the next session will start at 3:40. So if you guys want to stay here or come back later, yeah. Okay, thank you.